Well, we showed you our exclusive video top of the hour as vets and others descended on war memorials this weekend in Washington, closed by the federal government, even marching to the gates of the White House. By late today, the whole thing became the subject of an attack by some media outlets, suggesting that some caught-on-tape controversy was really what the event was all about.
I mean, Ben, you have to be embarrassed looking at that video. You don't think that was members of your party? Aren't you a Republican? Those were Tea Party people.
Did you see some of the people out there about it?
Who initiated this protest? It was Tea Party Republicans. Come on, Ben, cut the crap. It's a misplaced emotion because the person in the White House, quite frankly, did not shut the government down. The Republican Party, Tea Party members, shut the government down.
I think there's something deeply enraging to these folks that there is a black family in the White House right now.
And so that was why they did that?
I think it's a threat. Now, I think it's a pretty small group. They said this was going to be the Million Vet March, and there were only a couple hundred folks out there. But they have leaders like Sarah Palin and Ted Cruz that are indulging their worst impulses and their worst paranoid fantasies.
Joining me now, Karen Agnes. She's the president of the Network of Enlightened Women, an organization for conservative college women, and Mark Hanna, who's a Democratic analyst and a veteran of 2 presidential campaigns. Now, I want to say that the CNN anchor was making reference to that video we saw of them bringing those gates to the gates of the White House. The woman who was on MSNBC was referring to the man standing with the Confederate flag, suggesting that, you know, these people have a problem with a black family in the White House. Karen, I want to start with you. Why? Why is that where they go to dismiss, you know, the enormity of this event by pointing to admittedly bad examples of behavior?
The media seems to like to play this game of let's find the most controversial poster instead of actually talking about what we should be focused on, which is a real lack of leadership in the White House. The White House is who is playing games instead of governing. That's what the story should really be about.
Mark, what do you make of it?
Look, Megan, you're a professional journalist. I'm not. But you know that there's always a balance you have to strike when you look at these events and rallies and protests and things like this. You want them to be as representative as possible, but you also have to find the most newsworthy things. And the fact that there's an a Confederate flag hanging outside of a protest that has American veterans is pretty grotesque and pretty newsworthy, as is, for example, one of the organizers calling Barack Obama, a church-going Christian, a Muslim, and calling for revolution. That might not be a representative example of what was happening there over the weekend, but it's certainly newsworthy, and I think that's why media outlets are covering it.
But do they jump to cover that? Because, you know, there's a question that if you watch the coverage of this event on some of our competitors, you would think that that's what, Look at these vets in the wheelchairs with the American flags. This isn't what the B-roll's been on the other channels. It's been all about Larry Klayman and what he said about the Koran, which is newsworthy, but not indicative of what this whole event was about. And I ask you whether that speaks to an agenda, Karen, an agenda that means to marginalize the protests that these vets were trying to bring.
Yes, it does. And unfortunately, we're not seeing fair coverage. While I'd agree that, you know, it's fair to cover the entire rally, we should be talking about it more fairly in terms of what the vets were really trying to do. I mean, this White House is playing games. Remember the sequester when they shut down the White House tours? They're trying to make this as painful as possible. And that's the real story here.
You know, Mark, It speaks to me because you can always find examples of bad behavior. And the suggestion that, okay, that one man standing up and saying that, or that guy with the Confederate flag, that somehow is indicative of the Tea Party, because their detractors have been saying this about them from the beginning, trying to marginalize them as these kooks, as these racist kooks. You can always, and I put together this full screen just to make my point, okay? These are 4 well-known people who have taken it from the left, from progressives, okay? Clarence Thomas, dismissed as an Uncle Tom, repeatedly, dismissed by a PBS commentator saying she hopes he dies early like many black men. Then you've got Marco Rubio, dismissed as a coconut by a commentator on another network. Here's Elaine Chao, married to the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, suggested that's the reason all the jobs are going to China by her detractors. And then there's actress Stacey Dash, who was a Mitt Romney supporter, who was dismissed, and please forgive me for the use of the term, as a, quote, jigaboo, an Oreo, and a dumb bee by people online who didn't like her endorsement of Mitt Romney. Now, does that speak for the left any more than these examples speak for the Tea Party or the right?
I'll say that that name calling is the basis. It's not what the left does, and it doesn't speak for the left. But look, we're working in a political media environment where if every time one of your colleagues at Fox called somebody on the left a bad name, you know, your friend Sean Hannity and your friends Bill O'Reilly, they throw bad names and call names, my friends on the left names all the time, and it's offensive to some people and it's outrageous to some people.
But it's
kind
that's
of the
a
nature
different
of our,
point.
our media environment.
What I'm asking about is the essence of this news event being ignored for a reason, because instead they like to seize on some controversy and try to turn this event into something that it was not.
I'll answer that. Megan, is it a news event or is it an event that's orchestrated by a special interest group with a political agenda that had very low turnout? And while I believe that those veterans that appeared at the outside the White House in their wheelchairs were sincerely felt their opposition to the government and frustration toward the government, people who are following this know that the only reason the shutdown exists is because John Boehner won't bring this continuing resolution to a floor vote.
But that's a matter of opinion. These guys here, they don't care about that. They care about getting in to see the memorial that was built in their honor. Don't tell me these guys.
Right,
don't tell me this guy right here and all the
tomorrow.
others like him showed up there with some crazy agenda, whether it was left wing or right wing. Didn't they just want to get to their memorials and be heard? Karen, I ask you.
Yeah, let's remember, this is World War II veterans we're talking about. These are heroes. We should be doing things to help them. We should let them go see the memorial. The White House is just trying to make this as painful as possible, and it's ridiculous.
You know, it wasn't the only
example
of extremist commentary in response to this event, as we saw a columnist for the Washington Post, Kathleen Parker, who describes herself as right of center. She's not left of center, according to her. Who talks about Ted Cruz and calls him Ted Bin Laden. She says he's Ted Bin Laden, the guy who hands out suicide vests and then goes to lunch. I mean, let me get you to weigh in on this first, Karen, as somebody who describes herself as conservative and had a show on another network for a time. Ted Bin Laden about a U.S. senator?
Kathleen Parker is going too far on this. Ted Cruz has done a good job of bringing a story that's been completely overshadowed by the shutdown down, which is healthcare, and what a debacle it is. We've had it on the books for over 3 years, and the website doesn't even work. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it. The healthcare debacle is another huge story that we're just missing right now.
Well, I mean, Ted Cruz and Sarah Palin also took a lot of incoming for being at this event. And you heard the guy at the top of our show say he wishes that he supports these vets. He wishes they hadn't been there because he thinks it was a distraction. But I don't know, Mark. I'll give you the last word on it.
That was distasteful. That was distasteful. In the same though column that Kathleen Parker did, and she's one of these Maureen Dowds. It's a metaphor that she's using. She's basically saying that Ted Cruz is destroying the Republican Party. As somebody who's right of center, she's upset that he's making the Republican Party less popular than it was before the shutdown, and he's making Obamacare more popular by these tactics. So this is a suicide.
Is there any other? No, that's it. It's just the Bin Laden comparison. That's it. I'm out. That's
she was talking about.
All right, guys, I got to run.
Okay.
Good to see you again, Mark.
Megan.
You too, Karen.
Thanks, Megan.